Ladies and gentlemen, our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Stand by, VO. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kim Lawrence to the stage.
All right. Welcome. So thanks to everyone for being here today. As you heard, my name's Kim Lawrence. I am the president of North America at Visa, and we are thrilled to have you all here with us at our Visa Payments Vault. This is a pop-up that we've had running for almost 2 months here in DC, just adjacent to our offices here. And we've had a number of partners and clients and a number of folks from in and around the DC area joining us for a number of events. We were actually just talking about this is sort of our final week of events that we've got planned here in the Vault. So we're thrilled to have you all with us here this morning. At Visa, our vision is to be the best way to pay and be paid for everyone, everywhere. And that is incredibly important for small businesses as well. And so today we want to have a conversation with the Small Business Administration Administrator, as a mouthful. I'm going to use SBA from here on out, who I'm going to introduce in just a minute to talk about a lot of the work that not just we're doing at Visa, but what the administration is doing and by themselves, and then what we're doing together in partnership between public and private sectors to help and support small businesses across the U.S. And so a couple of things that I wanted to highlight, just programs that we've got running at Visa. We've got a number of things that we do in support of small businesses. There are evergreen programs that we run. The Visa Digital Empowerment Program is one of those programs focused on digitally enabling small businesses across the U.S. I've participated in a number of these events myself. We do networking in these programs. We partner a number of our experts. Some of them you're going to meet and hear from today are at those programs as well, at those events. And then we oftentimes hand out laptops. We provide support around enabling digital payments, literally getting them, small businesses, up and running with accepting payments. And so sort of bringing that vision that I talked about to life, the best way to pay and be paid, critical to small businesses. And so with that as context, I wanted to introduce the SBA Administrator Loeffler. Her focus is on rural manufacturing, onshoring, and Made in America, which reflects the resilience and opportunity that small businesses represent. We are thrilled to have her with us here today. We're going to focus on collaboration. So what I talked about just a minute ago, what we do, the work we do when we come together, and the power of that partnership between private and public sectors, how we can work together to ensure every small business, regardless of size or location, has a fair shot of success. Administrator Loeffler, I think many of you know her. She was a former U.S. Senator for Georgia. She's also the co-founder and CEO of Bakkt, which was a private company, is a private company. And we are thrilled to have her with us today. So please join me in welcoming Administrator Loeffler.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for being here. We're excited to have you.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to it. And I want to thank Visa for your great partnership around National Small Business Week and really all you do for small businesses. I love that you've already introduced the concept of public-private partnership, because I think that's critical.
Fantastic. So why don't we just kick things off with you telling us a little bit about some of the SBA's top priorities?
Well, the SBA is well known to many of you, so I don't have to tell y'all what we do, but I do have to tell you that we are back on mission. We are ensuring that we advance the interests of small businesses and grow the economy. That was our founding mission in post-World War II America. We're getting back to that. As Kim mentioned, I'm a private sector person, 3 decades in the private sector, but having increasingly responsible roles in financial services and so forth, eventually went on to found a few companies, had that experience as a small business person, but my most formative experience was growing up in a small family business on our family farm, in our small trucking company. I know what small business means to America. I know it's generational for families that get involved in small business. It's a people-driven business, and that's my passion, and I'm so excited to restore our mission, to bring back strength on Main Street and really convey the America First domestic economic policy agenda so that everyone can be lifted up, and we see that it's already working. I mean, we've already grown our loan volume 15% year over year. We're doing about 2,000 Main Street loans a week. It's about 45,000 loans so far this year for about $23 billion, I believe, is the number we've put out. So it's an incredibly powerful transmission mechanism of small business advocacy in the form of capital, which is the best thing that I think we can do in public-private partnership, because we know that these loans go out through small community lenders that are making a difference in their own communities. So it's incredibly humbling to be in this role and to rebuild this agency back to its founding mission.
It's fantastic. And at Visa, we have partners on both sides of payments, the issuers and the merchants that need to get paid, right? And so the issuers on behalf of the consumers. And as you said, a big part of our focus is on community banks and credit unions as well, right? So small businesses on one side, and then as you said, that sort of local effect that happens. A lot of times people think of banks, credit unions as big banks, right? And oftentimes there are literally thousands of financial institutions across the US that are those also really small businesses at the end of the day that are lending in those communities.
Yeah.
So let me pick up on capital, as you talked about. And we know from all of the work that we do across small businesses at Visa that capital continues to be a big challenge for small businesses. They need that to run their business. Oftentimes they use credit cards to help where they don't get formal lending the way that oftentimes consumers do. So can you just talk about what you've learned kind of along the way as like, what are the most common barriers that small businesses face in that space of getting capital?
Yeah, so there's a lot of inputs into capital access. Obviously, one of them is just that working capital or that foundational CapEx investment or capital for hiring. We do see pockets where people feel challenged by capital access, but we've seen in surveys, NFIB, for example, number one concern, particularly leading up to the One Big Beautiful Bill, was that the tax bill would not pass and that 20% pass-through deduction would evaporate and their taxes would double. So now that's off the table. Regulation was another one. Workforce, a skilled workforce was maybe third in that list, but access to capital is always critically important. The thing I'm more hearing about capital right now is the interest rate. Like people feel like interest rates are high and consuming way too much cash flow. So obviously we're all hoping for a rate cut. Probably not going to happen today at the Fed meeting, but one can hope, at least maybe in September. But we are doing our part at SBA to grow our 7A program, which is our core bread and butter program. But not just that, we have microloans, we have 504 real estate loans. We are making sure that our programs are easy and accessible. And as you mentioned, the lender network, we're gonna grow that lender network because I have seen a troubling decline. Hundreds of lenders have left the SBA program. We are gonna get them back and then add some. And so we're gonna do our part to streamline our kind of loan process we're already speeding it up, but what we want to do is make it easier, not just faster. And we want to also protect taxpayers, which are small businesses, because this is a zero subsidy program. It operates at no cost to the taxpayer when the underwriting standards are maintained.
That's great. And a big focus, like this gets back to kind of how I kicked off what you reflected as well in some of your opening comments around the partnership between public and private. I mean, I think part of what we're focused on, again, we kind of run in the payments lane at Visa, but doing everything we can to enable issuing partners to make, obviously there's the lending part of the bank and the financial institution, but there's also the credit card side of things, which is an important component to small businesses on sort of a monthly basis. So we continue to work on supplementing where we can on that side, creating products, ensuring that issuers have access to those products that provide important access to lending as well and some additional capital. Okay, you just mentioned the tax reform package that just recently passed. There's been a lot of news around that. Beyond sort of access to capital, what else in all of that reform is going to benefit small businesses?
Yeah, it's a really important topic because for short form, I just call the One Big Beautiful Bill, I call it rocket fuel. And it's really the largest working family and small business tax cut our country has ever had. And why do I say that? I mean, you all know the 20% pass-through deduction, 100% expensing. We're going to have a CapEx boom. So you can make those investments, take them down in year one. A lot of these changes go into effect this year, are retroactive, in fact. So they're rewarding those investments that were made early on. And obviously the list goes on. I think the more people are learning about it, the more they're understanding that this really gets the tax burden on hardworking small businesses and families out of the way. So it's not just no tax on tips, overtimes, 88% of seniors won't pay Social Security taxes. It incentivizes skilled trades through 529 and Pell Grants that can now go to trade school. So we're encouraging work, which we know is one of the top pain points for small businesses, that skilled workforce, and increases the child tax credit. Makes sure that the death tax doesn't get doubled on small businesses and farmers. It increases the standard deduction. There's really something for everyone to the extent that a working family of four will see a tax benefit of $6,000 to $10,000 every single year. that cumulative effect is going to be incredibly powerful. It's going to drive 1 million new jobs on Main Street for small businesses and $750 billion in economic development. So the list just goes on. I'll stop. But I really think it's important for people to dig in and see what else might be in it for them, because it is a massive boon to this economy.
It's great. One of the things that we've learned in our interactions with small business, I've heard from a number of them personally, where, access to capital is really important, but sort of building network and learning from others, getting tips and tricks, if you will, from other small businesses and others who've gone through the journey is just as important sometimes as capital. So in that vein, as you're out interfacing with small businesses, what are some of the best sort of practical strategies that you've been doling out, advice you've been given, whether it's on how to get access to capital, how to get up and running? You're like someone who's done it yourself. Like, what are some of those tips and tricks or information you share with other small businesses?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's so many ways to go with that question. I think just to focus on SBA and what we can offer small businesses in terms of getting back to our mission, it's not just access to capital. Like, not every business is ready to get in and borrow, but they may need business counseling. And we operate a broad network of small business development centers. We partner with SCORE. We have 68 field and regional offices to be out in the field, and we have pushed a third of our staff back into the field from being centralized in Washington the last 4 years. We've returned our employees to work. We had 90% working from home for 4 years. And so what we've done is said we are back to work for small business, but we are leveraging and pulsing that network of partners, SBDCs, SCORE, our regional offices, and making sure small businesses have those personal resources that they can reach out to and say, hey, I'm thinking about getting capital. Can you look at my business plan? Can we talk through this? And I think that's an important network.
Yeah. I completely agree. And access to experts, access to answer questions on any topics, I think is something that that we hear as well. Okay, let's shift a little bit and talk about technology and innovation. So by definition, small businesses are pushing the bounds of innovation day in and day out. Everything is moving so fast these days. What innovations or technologies are you most excited about?
Well, I'm excited about technology full stop and what it's going to do for small business. I mean, we are going to see the rise of the solopreneur thanks to AI. I think it's incredibly powerful. I think a lot of people are saying we don't know what it's going to bring. Obviously, uncertainty around technology has always been a thing, not just in this century, but in the last century. So with the automobile, the advent of the automobile from 1910 to 1950, we saw 500,000 jobs wiped out, but 7.5 million jobs added. So it can be incredibly exponential in terms of the capacity. We know that our workforce in the 1940s was 56 million. Today it's 170 million. And the rise of compute power has been straight up. So I don't think we need to be intimidated by the advance of compute. But I think the efficiencies that we're going to get from having small businesses be able to do a lot, and it's encouraging to us because we know that 60% of our loans go to businesses with 1 to 5 employees. So those businesses are alive and well. They're growing double digits in our loan portfolio, and I think technology is fueling that.
And how can small businesses stay ahead of the curve or keep up with the pace of change that's happening?
Yeah, look, it's what we've seen is people dipping their toe in the water and kind of getting in gradually and seeing where it takes them. And I think that's the most important thing you can do is to start engaging with that technology. I used a comparison last week. I built a small business using PowerPoint. I mean, just think if I had had Canva or Figma or social media, which we didn't have back then, so
right.
Or an iPhone. I think I did it on a BlackBerry, but which we all love the BlackBerry, but but it's one of those things that we all became adopters of smartphone, and saw our productivity. And what I'm very excited about is the productivity boom that we're not even talking about in this country. We had stopped talking about productivity for the last 4 years, and all we talked about was inflation. And now we are back to saying, look what we can do more with less and have better results. And we are going to get a productivity boom, which is why I think inflation is going to stay low. We're going to have fair trade, and we're going to have the most sophisticated advanced manufacturing and technological infrastructure that any company has or country has in this world.
Yeah. On AI, so at Visa, we've been doing what we do for nearly 70 years. I think nobody can have a conversation about innovation or technology without AI today. That's kind of what it equals right now. We've been adopting and implementing AI for the better part of decades now, already 20 to 30 years. Most of it is focused on fraud fighting, right? Identifying and mitigating and protecting businesses of all sizes from fraud. But as AI is becoming mainstream, I would argue has already become mainstream with billions of users on a daily basis. As you said, it's putting your toe in the water. How are you seeing small businesses use AI technology in particular to their advantage?
Yeah, and you mentioned fraud fighting. With AI, we're going to have more fraud. So that
Sure.
it's
Still
you
a
know
race.
it's going to continue to grow. So it doesn't mean that we're all safe. It means we've got to deploy more technology. But what I'm seeing technology being deployed to is reshoring in America, and I am very bullish on Made in America manufacturing because I have walked the factory floors in state after state. I've been in nearly half the states in our country in my first 6 months, and I have seen that we are going to take back industries that we had lost. We lost 100% of the bicycle building industry, thousands and thousands of jobs. Huffy, Murray, Schwinn, gone. Well, we now have a bike manufacturer in small town Indiana, Guardian Bikes. They're with 60 employees. They are mass producing bicycles that have tremendous patents on the braking system for safety for young kids. And we're doing that here with 60 employees and protecting our IP, making the turnaround times faster. And they're doing it with AI. They're doing it with robotics, robotic welders, AI-powered CNC machines, skilled workers that don't have to have a costly 4-year degree that puts them underwater at age 21. So I'm so bullish on what we can do with our skilled workforce, from building our manufacturing base, creating an economy that lifts up all the people that were left behind by terrible policy and corporate decisions to vacate, thousands and thousands of like 70,000 factories, 5 million workers out of the workforce. We can rebuild that. We don't need that, maybe that level. We do need manufacturing workers. We need 500,000 today. We're probably going to need 5 times that going forward because of the industries that we're going to be able to bring back home.
That's great. Just maybe one parting question as we're sitting here. I opened the kind of conversation with this partnership right across all of the work that you're doing on the public side, the work that we're doing on the private side. What do you need more of from the private side?
That's a great question, and I do think the partnerships are invaluable. As I said, building my career in the private sector, the reason I got involved in the public sector because we needed more business people in Washington. I felt like it just was one of those evident things working in business, in an innovative company. I saw that we started spending more time on policy than innovation, than customer service, than building out our technology. And I said, someone needs to go to Washington and tell people we are hurting our future, our growth, our productivity engine. And so I think the more that we can have small businesses engage in public policy, to have business leaders be in elected positions or policy positions, I think that's helpful. And then to have companies engaging in Washington. It mattered when I was a senator, when a company walked in and said, hey, here's why we're doing this. You may not understand this, but here's how the unintended consequences of this legislation could hurt our workforce. It could hurt our country's competitiveness on a world stage. So I just encourage everyone, an individual or a company, to be involved in the public policy discussion, and that will create those opportunities for finding that common ground to make our country strong and keep us the most exceptional leader in the world.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us today, for all that you're doing. All of your comments today were incredibly valuable. We are going to shift now to a panel discussion. I'm going to invite my colleague Denise Press, who runs our small business team in North America. She's going to be joined by a couple of panelists. Administrator Loeffler, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for, can you hear me? All right, excellent. Thank you so much for that conversation. I do consider myself a small business evangelist. So I could be here all day. I could keep you all busy all day, but we're going to continue the conversation with an excellent panel where we are going to continue the conversation on access to capital. Access to capital is critical because we know that it is one of the #1 pain points for small businesses today. We heard the administrator and Kim talk a lot about access to capital, but we also know that access to capital can create a tremendous friction point as it relates to cash flow, and cash flow is one of the #1 reasons that small businesses fail today. So I'd like to welcome to the panel 2 of our guests today. Todd McCracken, who is the president and the CEO of the National Small Business Association. Thank you, Todd. And Michael Canty. Michael himself is the CEO of a small business and will help bring to life some of these challenges. I'll also add, for a little bit of fun's sake, that I am also a small business owner. That is not my day job, but no doubt that this conversation is personal and is important to our economy as a whole. Now, I'd like to add that for today's conversation, we're also going to ground a lot of what we are going to talk about with some of the annual research that the National Small Business Association conducts. So just to ground ourselves there, one of the key metrics is that 40% of small businesses still struggle with access to the financing that they need. That is not just a statistic, but it is an opportunity for all of us to continue the conversation that Kim and the administrator talked about in terms of how do we help? How do we come together as a community, private, public, and all of us that are invested in small businesses today? So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and jump in.
Excellent.
All right. So the first is a little bit of an extension of that research. Todd, for you. So the latest economic report demonstrated that nearly 3 in 4 small businesses expect a flat or recessionary outcome for the year to come. And confidence is the lowest that we've seen since 2009. But I did dig into the report, and there's a lot there. So I would love your perspective in terms of what you're seeing, both from the output of the report, but in the conversations that you're having today.
Yeah, and thank you for being here. I want to say thanks to Visa for holding this event and really focusing on the needs of small business, especially in the access to capital front. Yeah, our survey that you're referring to did show a level of concern and uncertainty about the economy. I should hasten to add that the survey was in the field literally the week that the stock market dropped so much. So there was a lot of concern just sort of in the air generally, I think, in the nation. Since that time, I really am picking up more optimism from people again, and part of that actually is registered, I think, in the what is a perennial concern, which is access to capital, and I think that's something we all need to remember. When a small company says it needs capital, that means they're planning to grow, right? You don't need capital to sort of sit and be static. You need capital to take advantage of opportunities and to expand your business and to employ people and to innovate. So that demand for capital is always a good sign in the economy. I think we always have to remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, what are you seeing just in your day-to-day conversations, either with other business owners, groups, communities that you may be part of?
Well, I echo what Todd just said. At Alloy, we're a manufacturing company in the Cleveland, Ohio area. Our backlog is up about 70% over the past 6 months. I think timing of surveys is everything, but I'm seeing a great deal of optimism wherever I go when I talk to business owners and vendors coast to coast. this optimism is showing itself in consumer spending, it's showing itself in capital spending, it's showing itself in orders coming through, which obviously expands the need for access to capital, certainly, and the kind of programs that Visa can offer going forward. And I think that's going to continue for some time. And when you see the reconciliation bill being passed and stabilizing a lot of open questions on taxes and regulations that were big questions for small business, that's now been kind of solved, and you see the onshoring efforts taking place. Even the tariff situations, which for some may have been scary, that's being stabilized as we see one deal after another, and that's melding itself out, and that's good news for business, and that's good news for organizations like Visa.
Yeah, well, and thank you for that, because it's interesting. When we talk about small businesses, we often think of a relationship that's just between, let's say, a merchant and a consumer. But Michael, as you just talked about, it is actually an ecosystem that often includes business-to-business transactions, like with vendors. And so it's a really interesting ecosystem when we think how expansive that can be. So in those conversations that you have, what lending options do you see are available today? What financing options are you seeing really bubble up? And I'm going to ask both of you that question, just in terms of, what you are seeing, Todd, through either your report, which I know had quite a bit of detail in there, as well as the conversations, and Michael, in your day-to-day conversations as well.
Yeah, well, actually, credit card lending is the most often cited source of credit and capital. By the number of companies that say they use it, it's not the biggest in terms of the volume, because bank loans would be the biggest part there in terms of the total amount of capital available to companies. But that's the thing we have to always remember when we're thinking about credit access and capital access for small companies is it really is a mosaic, because there are different kinds of companies that have different kinds of needs at different stages of development, different parts of the economy, and that's why we have to have such a robust capital access system in this country, because there are all kinds of different needs at different points in the business life cycle. There's also different kinds of credit needs or credit products that are the best suited because of timing. Sometimes you need the money today or this week, and you don't have time to go to the bank and get an application and wait 6 weeks for an answer. By then, the deal's gone. So we need a robust, continuing set of answers for small companies looking to grow.
Right. Thank you.
Well, and that diversity of points of access is exceedingly important. Think of businesses in different tranches, even for small business. The smaller businesses, 1 to 5, 25 people, the merchants on the street, even lawyers and accountants and or consultants going in where there aren't a lot of hard assets. As a manufacturing company, we have a lot of hard assets, bricks and mortar. It is often a little easier for someone with bricks and mortar on the manufacturing side. It's not totally easy, but it's often easier because we have leverage, we have AR, we have assets that can be used as collateral, where many small businesses don't have that. So easing some of those restrictions for those small businesses, easing the regulations necessary, lending more on cash flow and projections of cash flow is really critical for these small businesses who don't have the bricks and mortar that manufacturing companies have, and the reliance on organizations like Visa, frankly, for paying vendors and for doing a lot of other things.
Well, that's great. And Michael, what has been, from a lending and access to capital standpoint for you, like along your journey, what has been the most useful, and were there any friction points along the way?
Well, there are always pinch points along the way, especially if you're growing, and we've been growing a great deal. Most businesses, and we are no different, run across the lines of having to learn about finance, having to learn about gaining loans as you grow. I remember in 2009, I just bought my partner out, and things crashed about 60 days later, and revenues dried up, and you have to totally rethink your entire business model to make sure that you survive and do well. And all business owners go through those ups and downs from time to time and have to rethink it. And that's irrespective of whether you're a micro small business or a merchant or a consultant or a manufacturing company going forward. So we use banks a lot. They get very nervous sometimes, and they haven't been quite as easy to deal with after some of the Dodd-Franks and some of those took place and added a sense of conservatism to a lot of what they're doing and how they do it. But banks we use a lot. We certainly use a credit card for our payments of the buying of little incidental things, all of our maintenance items and paying of vendors and things like that. Certainly when I travel, like to here, we use credit cards, right? And we pay them back. And so there's a lot of technology systems that are being developed and have been developed and will continue to make it easier to make those payments, to make it easier to track what you're doing and analyze what you're doing to make sure that you're doing it according to a plan and according to a budget so you don't overspend.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I often say the CEO of a small business is the chief of everything officer. So we need that easy button from onboarding. And we heard the administrator say that speed is important. And so we are continuing to work on how can we support financial institutions, whether they be community banks, whether they're credit unions, larger financial institutions. How can we help facilitate that easier onboarding? It is complex. It is also a reason why small businesses need to establish themselves as a small business and separate out their personal expenses and establish a business bureau of their own so that they can start on that journey and get access to capital. So along those lines, what do you see as the future in terms of, like, Todd, when you recognize through some of the research, through the conversations, that there is there is access, there are many solutions. Are there some solutions that you think that we should lean into? Where do you see that future state in terms of capital?
Well, I do think we need to strengthen our community banks, because one of the pieces of advice I always give small companies as they think about, how do they be resilient for the long term is, make sure you have a really strong business plan and make sure you have some kind of relationship with your bank, right? And that is easiest when you have a community independent bank you can go to. In many communities these days, there are fewer and fewer of those. So to strengthen those community banks would be a big help for small companies. But also the other thing the administrator talked before about the importance of AI. And I do think that a lot of AI can really sharpen the ability of small companies to get the capital that they need and sharpen the ability of financial institutions to figure out the credit worthiness of the company, the business owner, so that we can expand that credit access over time.
Okay, great. Michael, do you have thoughts on that as well?
Well, some of the same thoughts. So these community banks are exceedingly important. The regional banks, exceedingly important, especially as the large ones, with all the services they can provide, often get a little antsy dealing with smaller enterprises. And so it strengthens the need for these smaller banks. And when people ask me, I tell them, if you're going to go for a loan, if you're going to go for capital, whether it's to the SBA or whether it's to organizations like Visa or to your bank, be prepared. Don't wing it. Know what you're going for. Know what you're going to be spending for. Understanding what you expect the outcome to be. Because if you wing it, chances are you're going to fail. You need to have a plan with what you're going to do and how you're going to do it in advance to be able to seek it. And then your reliance on AI is critical. It's not just AI, it's all the technology which is ramping up in this country and around the world faster than any of us can possibly think at this point. And it is so critical for all companies of all sizes, but especially small businesses who have a wealth of ideas and are often at the forefront of implementing technology and new products out the door. They rely on this technology to help them analyze their business, analyze their payments, analyze their cash flow, because that's going to give them a big step up in the competitive world, and both in gaining access to capital, but also in competing, not only domestically, but across the country and across the world.
And as you know, the technology is enabling companies to actually access capital while they're doing a transaction. So that's really exciting too.
Oh yes, we'll dive into that too. Absolutely. And just to build on both of your comments, like Michael, you said it's not a good idea to walk into the bank and to wing it, right? It's just generally speaking, right? But as it relates to financial education, to really understand what it takes to start, operate, manage, and grow a business, financial acumen is extremely important. We have, and many of you saw some of the work that we do today, both on the consumer and the small business side. We have a free resource through Visa called Practical Business Skills that gets just at that. And so financial acumen in running a business is really critical. So Todd, if you can share some of your perspective, and Michael, I'd love to hear from you as well in terms of what resources do you use today, or do you direct others to, and how can we together, whether it's public and private, do more?
I'll start, I guess. I mentioned before that every company should have a business plan, whether they're just starting or whether they are, they've been in business for a few years. But it's especially critical for the new companies, new startups, because so many of those new entrepreneurs may have a great idea. They may know exactly their craft. They may have it down, but they may have never run a business before. So I always suggest to them they have a business plan, that they visit their local small business development center, or that maybe explore the SCORE network, and all the tools like that Visa you just described that Visa has now that are available to companies to access those critical skills, because there are so many tools that are available to companies now, but they have to reach out and find them.
Yes.
And they need to do that. The other thing that they will find if they connect with a local chamber or even some of those other organizations is the ability to network with others, because that is the thing that I think is the single most beneficial thing for people who are already in business is to talk to their peers, find out what people are doing, catch the trends. And it also gives them the necessary perspective to realize that their challenges aren't their own, right? Everybody has these challenges. And that really helps, I think, people persevere and grow their companies, because it can be a very lonely place to be running a new company on your own.
I think that's really true. We hear that time and time again, that network is extremely important in terms of learning, but also to know that you're not alone in that journey. Absolutely. Michael, you were nodding your head along the same lines.
Well, absolutely. And I think a focus in on constantly training employees about the analytics. I noticed walking around this merchant analytics, which I'm anxious to learn a little bit more about. Analytics today are incredibly important throughout an organization, but for also the financial side of it. When I walk around our plant, we have 100 people, and I tell everyone on the floor who's never been trained in a P&L or a balance sheet. I mean, I can't run a CNC machine. They can. And so I try to bring financial education to them. So when I walk around the plant, I say, 1 minute, $2. If you save a minute, you save $2. If you waste a minute, you waste $2, and it all goes to their bonus structures throughout the organization. It's amazing how quickly they get it, right? And everyone in our organization, on the professional, we only have 3 basic levels, the engineers and the BDMs and all, they must learn a P&L at least down to the gross profit level. So every decision they make needs to be reflecting on the P&L. And if I'm in a meeting with them and they make a comment, I'm going to say, how does that affect the gross profit? And hopefully they know. If they don't, then we stop the meeting and we teach them right there. We give them internal training. We send them on the outside. So the kind of programs that you can do on the inside, the kind of programs that you can send your employees and yourself to on the outside, like Visa's developing programs and other outside seminars, is critically important to the success and growth of a company.
Oh, that's amazing. So not only do you have that acumen and the knowledge, but you are sharing that with your employees, which I would say is actually pretty rare and amazing. That it empowers them, and it gives them a level of understanding as to how that business is running and how they can make an impact.
Well, it makes them engaged.
Yes,
And
that's great.
We all worry about finding new people, right? For us, for most businesses, it's like trench warfare, right? They steal from us, we steal from them, and the winner is the person with the most number of people at the end of the day. And so, but to keep them there, especially the newer generations, you've got to get them engaged in a wide ranging of things. And getting them engaged and understanding the financial implication of their decision is really important. That helps them be part of the business, not just someone who works at the business.
Yeah, I love that. And Todd, one of the things that you talked about was access to counselors. How do you find that businesses gain the knowledge as to where they can find access to counselors? So for example, the ASBDC, we recently added their network, and we have some additional work that we can do with some other agencies as well. We've added them to our hub online. So if there is a small business that comes to Visa, that we can then ensure that they have access. What more can we do?
I think just continuing to get the word out in a big way. That's what we do. There's no magic or silver bullet to getting the word out to folks, but those networks themselves talk about themselves. Yep. We promote them. Local chambers promote them. Yep. So I do think the word gets out there to folks eventually of where to find these resources. There's all kinds of webinars and free resources for budding entrepreneurs. That's I think is really important for our entrepreneurial ecosystem right now. It's part of what makes this country's economy so strong, is because our small business structure is so strong.
Yep, absolutely. So you also spoke a little bit about access to capital in a moment, which I think you were referring to, something that many of us call embedded finance. So as we talk about innovation, we spoke a bit about AI and the impact. For those of you that had an opportunity to tour around, you will see that Visa continues to be incredibly invested in the entire ecosystem to ensure that the best way to pay and be paid, that the infrastructure, the promise of safety and security in that transaction continues as innovation evolves. There was also, which I really loved, a conversation around how innovation has helped bring the access to subway here in DC easier, right? So now in DC you can tap your card and get access right away. And while DC may have been maybe one of the last of the big cities to get there, it's extremely important. And I mention this because the access and the ability to just to eliminate that friction point of like trying to get a ticket and what if you're in from out of town, et cetera. The friction point has been eliminated at the moment that individual is trying to get through the turnstile or whatever, sort of get access onto the subway. So as it relates to small businesses, we think about it in a very similar manner, which is that the business owner or the management team are conducting their business. You said it, they're good at the craft. Maybe they're a baker and they're running a bakery, or they're a creator and they're creating content. That is their craft, that is what they are good at, but now they're also running a business. And so as I said, that CEO is the chief of everything officer. And so they may be deep into their accounting software. AI can now empower the ability to have good insights into your cash flow, into your transactions. And so as we've had this conversation around what we call embedded finance, that essentially is eliminating the friction point of having to go to the bank, to bring in the documents, to wait the 6 weeks, as you said. Now, it's not always that case, and we hope that's not the case with cards, but there are instances. And so if we think about that parallel between getting into the subway and a business owner or the management team that in their day-to-day tasks, they're working through their accounting system, we can now embed finance into those systems to get access to cash flow, see how the business is performing, and then that future state is to be able to offer a loan at that moment, right? It is at that moment, not at a later date, not at a head. So giving the insights, A, and then B, giving the access. And so I sort of see those in terms of parallel from eliminating that friction point.
Yeah, it's a really exciting prospect because it's really hard to overstate how valuable a business owner's time is, because he or she is doing everything, especially on the smaller end. I mean, Michael has a CFO, I'm sure, and he's achieved enough of a
Thank
skill
God.
that he's got some help. But a lot of this, especially startups and companies with fewer than 10 employees or so, the CEO is, as you say, the CE of everything, and so making things simpler for them and improving their access to capital and credit improves their cash flow, but mostly it frees up their time so they can train employees, they can find clients, they can expand their business, look for opportunities, and it's really hard to overstate how valuable that is when you're trying to grow a business.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It also helps them understand the expertise they may not be quite aware of at that point. And with all the other things a small business owner has to do, and they still have to learn the financial sides of things, they may not know it, and they clearly aren't going to know it with the businesses and organizations they deal with on a regular basis. This helps take some of that black magic out of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt, no doubt. So for those in the audience and anybody who's watching online, do you have either 1, 2, or 3 really critical pieces of advice that you give day in and day out to businesses, whether they're starting or whether they've been in business for some time?
Well, I'll go back to what I already said because it's worth saying again, and that is to have a business plan, and especially as you develop, have a strategic plan for your company that you're as Michael has done, that your employees buy into, right? That it's not just your own plan in your own head, that you've got buy-in from the people around you that are helping you grow the business and succeed. And since we're so focused now on credit and capital, because you've got to have that to grow, have a relationship with your banker, and that means even if you don't need that line of credit right now, go get one anyway and use it for something. So that you have that track record, so that when that time is right for your business to grow, you have the tools and the access to do it.
Okay, so have a business plan and have a relationship with a financial institution so that you're ready to go when you need to. That's great. Michael.
Well, and one of our 5 core values, which permeate our entire organization as a culture, is innovation. And we're talking a lot about innovation here. And small business owners, whether you're newer to the game or whether you've been around for a while, of almost any size, you've got to embrace the concept of change and innovation and growth. Innovation for us that is how we grow. That's part of our core values. And it can be in the office, it can be in the plants. But a small business owner has to be ready for change on a moment's notice. And if something isn't working or it needs to be tweaked, they need to recognize it at that moment. Accountability for it to themselves and to the others, part of our core values as well, and make that change on the fly, because if they make that change now or they don't, 4 more changes are going to take place over the next short period of time that they're going to have to react to as well. So adopt new innovation, and as Kelly said earlier, just start. Just start with the new technologies and the new ideas, and then you'll find it's not so difficult. Remember when I first got my first computer, and this goes back about 140 years ago, and they plopped it on my desk, and I said, now what? And I didn't even know how to turn the thing on, right? But once you turn it on and you press a button or two, you start. Pretty soon you find it isn't that difficult, and these concepts come pretty quickly, and now you're on your way.
Okay, that's great. So then the third would be embrace innovation and technology. And then I would wrap that back to some of what you both said, which is to also access your network and to access resources, because technology and innovation can feel daunting to some. As you said, the big new computer that arrived on your desk, you were able to turn it on, which was a good first step. I remember those buttons in the back. But access those networks, because you're not alone, and there are so many networks and resources, many of which are free, that businesses can tap into to learn and understand what is applicable for your business if you are a manufacturer. What if you need a new CRM? What if you're looking for accounting software, et cetera, and so on. And of course, that expands the conversation well beyond access to capital, but it's a critical part in terms of the ongoing success, and where we are all invested is to see small businesses thrive. So So with that, thank you. Thank you for your time, for your candor, and for the conversation. And thank you, everybody, for attending today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is this on? No, I'm on. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Denise, Todd, and Michael. So, Michael, I promise we're not going to steal your employees who all know about P&Ls, but I would like to know your training program for your employees. So I'm going to talk to you after that, because every company should be doing what you're doing. Fantastic advice directly from one of the constituents and partners that we're talking about today, small business owners. So thank you to everyone for joining. I think the great thing coming off of this conversation, I think we spent the bulk of our time over the last hour or so talking about a lot of challenges the small businesses face. So we're clear on the problem statements. But the good news is we talked a lot about solutions as well. So whether it's solutions around access to capital, the importance of networking that I think we all talked about, everyone on the stage talked about this morning. We know from small businesses directly that networking is almost the most important thing that they can do, learning from each other, sharing some of the tips that we heard on the last panel. One piece of advice for anyone who hasn't tried AI, the best thing that has changed around plopping a computer on your desk versus having this magical tool on your desktop that literally will tell you how to use it and optimize it. Just try it, and if you don't know how to use it, ask it how to use it, and it will tell you how to use it. That is my piece of advice for today. So much easier than using a computer. No, seriously. So I know we've got a whole wide range of folks that are joining us here in the room and on the stream today. We all have a role to play here. From Visa's side, we are committed not just to partnering and helping enable small businesses, but also partnering and continue to helping enable all of our community banks and credit unions that are also small businesses in many respects, but also are huge enablers, we've heard today, around small businesses in our communities. We all know that when small businesses thrive, communities thrive. So we're going to continue doing our part. We'll ask everyone here and that watches this to continue to do their part as well. Thank you again for joining us, and hopefully everyone has a great day. Thanks so much.